Allah يبارك فيك. كرمكم الله. Let's see if anyone has any questions, inshallah. And I very much encourage everyone, since we're going to have some break in between, inshallah, from December 20th until we resume, inshallah, sometime in January. I encourage everyone to keep the discussion ongoing whenever you meet with each other again. Share something that you have read or something that you have seen and that might be of interest, and keep the discussion going. Keep that life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam present in our daily practices. That would be the best use of it, and that would be the greatest benefit that we can get from it, inshallah.
Very much true, Dr. Ihab, very much true. I already see the benefit, inshallah, in all what you're doing. And these sessions being online is a very great help just for people who cannot catch up and do that at their own time, inshallah. Yes.
So, does anyone have any questions before we conclude, inshallah?
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Ihab. Just a quick question, if I can ask.
Please.
So you mentioned that it was Haqqa and Ma'arij and An-Naba and Nazi'at that were revealed in succession. And what was the gap? And if you can quickly touch upon the circumstances of the Haqqa and Ma'arij revelation.
Well, actually, that's going to be a long question to answer. Maybe we can start with that next time, inshallah.
Inshallah.
But basically, these surah came sort of in succession, and most of them, as you can see, are relatively short surah. And the tempo in these surah is very fast. So, for example, the difference between Surah Al-An'am and Surah Al-Haqqa or Surah Al-Ma'arij or Surah Al-Mulk, which was also another surah revealed around that time, you find that these short surah have shorter ayat, and the surah itself is relatively short and very quick to read. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through, as Sayyid Qutb rahimahullah says, that through this fast tempo,
come here.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is waking up the senses of the people who are listening to these ayat. Because again, if it's a fast tempo, and if it's especially if it's talking about something that's so severe, like the day of judgment and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for both camps on the day of judgment, this is something to wake up the senses, and this is something to make them wake up from their slumber, and they sleep and listen to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, abandon this arrogance, abandon this familiarity with that way of life, and try to come up to that new way of life that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is inviting them to. As many scholars agree that the last surah that was revealed completely in Mecca is Surah Al-Mutaffifin. So again, inshallah, next time we probably will talk about that. And we find that Surah Al-Mutaffifin is a very good transition between Mecca and Medina, because it's talking about, the surah starts with وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ وَإِذَا كَلُوهُمْ أَوْ وَزَنُوهُمْ يُخْسِرُونَ. It is talking about daily transactions. It's talking about buying and selling and weighing and cheating and sort of things of that sort. So these are things that usually take place in a stable society. Buying and selling and trading and all the malpractices that come with that happen in a stable society. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is linking this to denying faith. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving one of the last warnings to Quraysh before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrates to Al-Madinah al-Munawwara, that you should abandon this, and you should abandon making fun of the believers. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ أَجْرَمُوا كَانُوا مِنَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا يَضْحَكُونَ وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِهِمْ يَتَغَامَزُونَ. So this mocking of the believers and this feeling that you are higher, you're stronger, and they are lower and weaker, that is going to vanish very soon. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them, don't these people recognize that someday they're going to be resurrected in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where they're going to be held accountable for all of these deeds? So inshallah, we're going to talk about that. We can start also with that next time, or next time in our on the 20th, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, if you have further to add on that, Brother Khalid, please, you can stop me. I did mute you just because I was hearing some background noise, so you can unmute yourself. Inshallah, waiting for another question, but I have one, Dr. Ihab, just a confusion maybe on my part. Somehow in my reflection, I think, when during this battle of the trenches, when Rasulullah hit the stone and there were sparks coming out, I thought this was related to the Surah Al-Rum, no?
Yeah.
However, you touched on other aspect. Go ahead.
No, Surah Al-Rum was revealed in Mecca, and we're going to talk about that next time, inshallah, how Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu understood it and what kind of promise did he do with one of the non-believers. But the events in that surah are predominantly described in Surah Al-Rum, Surah Al-Nur, and Surah Al-Ahzab. So Ghazwat al-Khandaq is primarily Ghazwat al-Ahzab, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the events in this surah, as well as in the last part of Surah Al-Nur about people trying to sneak out of that responsibility of digging the trench and claiming to have excuses while they do not have excuses. But it was another confirmation to what the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned before to Sayyidina Khabbab, as we mentioned today, that when he ﷺ hit that stone 3 times and it turned into dust or sand, with the first blow, at each time he would hit it, ﷺ, light would come, something like lightning would come out of it. And the Prophet ﷺ asked his companions, did you see that? And basically, with the first blow, he ﷺ mentioned that Faris is going to be conquered, with the second one that the Roman Empire is going to be conquered, and with the third one that Yemen is going to be conquered. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling them that, look, we are besieged right now, we are surrounded from all sides by the enemies, yet hope is there, and I promise you, just as he gave the promise earlier to Sayyidina Khabbab radiallahu anhu, that one day this religion is going to be supreme and is going to rule over all of these kingdoms. So the Prophet ﷺ said, I have seen the palaces of Busra in Iraq, I have seen the palaces of Asham, I have seen this and that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make all of that belong to the believers. And it happened within less than 30 years after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, especially during the time of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, where Persia was conquered and the Roman Empire was conquered as well. So that was the fulfillment of that vision that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw on that day. Wallahu
a'lam. And in relation to today's topic about Sayyidina Abu Bakr trying to immigrate and he was stopped by somebody, there was another event of a old lady trying to immigrate, and Umar radiallahu anhu saw her.
Yes.
Is this going to be covered also?
That was much earlier. That was much earlier, actually. That was at in the very first few years, because at that time she was trying to migrate to Al-Habasha. And at that time, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu has not yet become a believer. And we know that Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu embraced Islam much earlier than the events that we're talking about today. At that time, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu was already a Muslim. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu was number 40 in Islam. So that was a long time before the events that we're talking about. It was probably 6 or 7 years before the events that we're talking about today. And that woman, the story, to summarize it very quickly, that woman was trying to migrate to Al-Habasha, and Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anha asked her, إِنَّهُ الرَّحِيلِ يَا Abdullah, are you leaving Abdullah? And she said, yes, you made our life miserable in Mecca, we can't live here anymore, and so on. And then she was expecting Sayyidina Umar to explode in her face and fight her or something like that. And Sayyidina Umar very kindly and very tenderly, which was uncharacteristic of him at that time, he said, صَحِبَتْكُمُ السَّلَامَ, may you travel in peace. So when she went home to her husband and she told him about that, he looked at her in amazement and he said, do you think that someday Umar ibn al-Khattab is going to become a believer? I believe that the donkey of al-Khattab is going to become a believer before Umar becomes a believer. And again, he didn't know what he's talking about. Very few, I would say, months or even days after that, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu became a great companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is something, by the way, that's very important. We should never put ourselves as judges of people, saying this person will never do this, or this person will never do that, or this person will never become a believer, or this person will never do something wrong. Again, we should reserve our judgment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only can make this judgment, because only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's in the hearts of people. So we reserve or we relinquish that judgment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He only subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Hakam, Al-Adl, Al-Latif, Al-Khabir subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was another proof that we should not rush to judgment, because people that we may think today are enemies of Islam, maybe someday they're going to become great soldiers for Islam and defenders of the faith. And this story actually happens quite a lot, especially in the second part of the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina. Most of, not all, but most of the fierce opponents of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who fought him fiercely for so many years ended up being companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just to cite a few: Sayyidina Abu Sufyan radiallahu anhu, his wife Sayyida Hind bint Utbah radiallahu anha, Ikrima ibn Abi Jahl radiallahu anhu, Suhail ibn Amr radiallahu anhu, Safwan ibn Umayyah radiallahu anhu, Khalid ibn al-Walid radiallahu anhu. All of these are people who fought the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for so many years, and now today when we mention their names we say radiallahu anhum ajma'in, because they became companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Allahu Akbar. There's one more question, inshallah. Sister writes, was this a masjid concerning the Abu Bakr's masjid open to all Muslims, or was this something he made as a place of?
No, it was just as a place of worship at his own home. It was not open for Muslims, and it's not mentioned in any books of the Seerah that people joined Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. He just made it a place for his own worship, so that he can pray separate from his bedroom or where he used to meet with people, and he can feel at ease. And especially, you can think about it also in the hot nights of Mecca. It would be an open air place where he can pray for as long as he wants in a relative breeze, rather than the confinement of a room or something like that. And it seems that, again, there was something like a fence around the house of the Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, but it was not that tall, so people could see from the outside. They could see him, and they could hear him pray also, especially when he prayed at night loudly. People would hear his recitation and his crying in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's basically, many people like that, and many people wanted to get into this beauty of Islam, but Quraysh tried to stop them from doing that, and that's why they tried to stop this practice of Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu.
Jazakallah khair. So we started 5 minutes late, and inshallah ending in the same note. Jazakallah khair again, Dr. Ihab. We welcome you inshallah this journey, and then we will see you inshallah on 20th.
Inshallah Rabbil Alameen. Make dua for us inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.